Good evening, UMass Amherst. My name is Tommy Kaludi and I am your host, and this is UMass Sports Weekly, your #1 source for all things UMass sports. Now, as the year winds down, we come to the penultimate episode of this show, next week being the final episode, and still, we have a lot of news and a lot of things going on in the world of UMass sports. First, we're going to bring you some breaking news from the basketball world and a new hurdle that Coach Matt McCall will have to jump over in order to get the Minutemen ready for next season. Now, after that, Liam Burns is going to come on to talk about the men's baseball team, the recent skid they were on, and how maybe things could be looking up for them. After that, I'll talk a little bit about the women's lacrosse team and the success they've had. And to finish out the show, John Andersen will talk about the men's lacrosse team in CAA play. It's going to be a great show. We have a lot to talk about. And I have a good feeling that things are going to go great tonight. This is UMass Sports Weekly.
This is UMass Sports Weekly.
Welcome back. I'm glad you got to see Victor Cruz. Now, last week, the men's basketball team received some shocking news. After Matt McCall was the honorary coach of the UMass spring football game, two star players, DeJean Giroux and Bryson Gresham, decided that they would like to transfer from the university, this coming on the heels of the firing of former coach Derek Kellogg. Gresham released a statement. It was actually a iPhone note on his cell phone that he was nice enough to reveal to the public. He said, "I would like to take this time to say thanks to the UMass community, alumni, professors, educational staff, previous coaching staff, and loyal, faithful fans for the love, hospitality, and support through my first year of my college career. After highly considering my career path with my family, high school, and AAU coach, we decided to request a release from the UMass basketball program. Lastly, I would like to say thanks to the new coaching staff for their understanding in our request and granting it immediately. Thanks, y'all, Bryson Gresham." Now, the big news surrounding Gresham and Giroux, other than the fact that they have not released where they will be transferring to, is the fact that they were two of the biggest recruits and probably the biggest recruiting tandem in the NCAA this offseason. Giroux, last year's point guard for the Minutemen, who averaged 9.8 points a game, was a top 100 NCAA recruit and a 4-star recruit. Bryson Gresham came in as a highly touted big man with a lot of rebounding prowess and very upscale talent. Gresham struggled most of the year with health issues, but once he was deemed eligible, the two had successful years and had a lot of upside. So, another thing that Matt McCall will have to work on, another thing he'll have to work around, and another challenge that he will face as he takes the Minutemen into the 2017-18 season. Now, moving from basketball to baseball, we have a team that has been struggling for what seems like a month. And when I say what seems like a month, it's probably been more than a month. They're on a multi-game losing streak, and things haven't been looking good, but we're going to bring Liam Burn in. Things have turned around a bit. So, Liam, the first thing I want to talk about with this team, they haven't been winning a lot.
Right.
We have 4 games, these past 4 games that happened last week. Was there any light at the end of the tunnel with these games?
Surprisingly, yes, there was.
Well, define there was.
Well, the first game against Northeastern was the consolation of the Bean Pot, which was at Fenway Park. UMass took the victory 6-5 as they were trailing, where all their runs were scored in the bottom of the 4th. So after the run surge, the Minutemen senior pitcher Ryan Maloney was lights out on the hill, retiring all 6 batters that he faced and picked up his first career save as a Minuteman. Now, after the consolation game at Fenway, UMass took on last place LaSalle, and this is a big series for the Minutemen. Granted that LaSalle is a last place team, and it could be a good few wins for UMass. So the first game started off on Friday. UMass continued their streak, their 2-game winning streak now, with a 6-2 win over the last place Explorers. Now, the Minutemen started off the game 1-0, and throughout the game increased their lead. 1 run in the second, 2 in the 5th, and 3 more for insurance in the 8th. Now, the game on Saturday was postponed due to weather. They were playing in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So there was a doubleheader for Sunday. The first game, UMass dropped 4-3. They had a lead early. It was 2-1 UMass, but it was back and forth throughout the whole game. As you can probably tell or just figure that both low teams in this conference are going to be easier to go up against because they're so similar in their record and just their play in general. But LaSalle was able to prevail, taking game 1 of the series. And now finally game 2 of the finale, UMass won, and with a really good fashion. They beat the Explorers 3-0. A wonderful performance by Mike Gianellis, who we will get to right now.
So a little bit of a spoiler alert there, but Liam, whenever there's a 4-game winning streak with this team, what usually happens is somebody stands out or there's a really extraneous or really outlandish individual performance that propels the Minutemen over the top. Was that the case this weekend in these past 4 games?
It wasn't completely outlandish, but it was just something that it was good to see for this program, winning a series and making themselves known in the A-10. But who I saw that stood out was starting pitcher senior Mike Gianellis. Now, he started game 2 of this doubleheader, who I already preempted to, and he threw a complete game, striking out 9 and only giving up no runs. And it was a complete game, and he was stellar on the mound, and we've definitely mentioned his name here before. And definitely it's good to see that UMass was able to increase their pitching game in this series going into the tail end of A-10 play. And 2 other players for UMass who I would like to spotlight is junior left fielder Brett Evangelista. No, we'll put it at that. Yeah.
Sorry about that, Brett. Brett Evangelistia?
Let's go with
Evangelistia.
that. Evangelistia.
Sorry about that, Brett.
Yeah, if he's watching.
Much
love.
watching.
Peace and love. He went 3 for 4, contributing 2 runs in game 2 against LaSalle, leading the charge for UMass as they brought 9 hits in the victory. So he was a main contributor to that. Sorry I botched your last name. And finally, senior second baseman John Avalone, who went 2 for 3, contributing 1 run and 1 walk in that second game as well. So a lot of good play from your seniors and upperclassmen. We've been talking recently of how this team is very young, but it's good to see in this past series, coming to the tail end of conference play, that the seniors and juniors are getting their licks in as well.
So you talked about coming to the tail end of conference play, which means the conference tournament is coming up. This team has had a rocky year. They started off decent, started off relatively well in conference play, and then things kind of roller coasted down out of control. Now they've swung back up, 2-game winning streak. Where do they stand now, and what are their chances of making the postseason?
Yeah, so right now they are 5-7 in the A-10 conference, which isn't too bad, even though their overall record is 11-22. Now they play a lot of non-conference games during their season, so being 5-7 in the conference isn't entirely the worst thing that could happen for this team. There's a 4-way tie for 8th place in the A-10, and it's up in the air, basically. The A-10 is completely up in the air. You have VCU at first with a stellar record of 13-2 in the A-10. Rhode Island, St. Bonaventure, George Mason, St. Louis, Davidson, Fordham, and then the 4-way tie. And only 7 teams make it into the conference tournament. So that leaves a lot of space open for UMass, especially since they're tied with Richmond, St. Joe's, and George Washington. And coming up for UMass in the rest of their A-10 play, if Dayton and Rhode Island, Fordham, and it's a long season. It ends out after graduation, so they end the season against Davidson. Now, Rhode Island they'll definitely have trouble with. I can totally see that. Dayton, not so much. I think they'd be all right with Dayton, but they have a game before Dayton series against Quinnipiac, a nice non-conference game before a conference series. So, Tommy, their chances looking better than years past, I think, because I feel like the morale of this team is to come off of this weekend series win, coming into more series and hopefully doing better than they have expected to do. Because this team, I feel like if I was a UMass baseball player, I'd be thinking, yeah, I love playing baseball, but the reputation of this team and just the way the A-10 is, it's tough how we're going to think we're going to win. And plus, Mike Stone last year, I feel like as a player I'd want to win for him.
Yeah, it's also really important getting Ryan Maloney back in the lineup and back throwing well.
Definitely.
Because he was a stud for them last year, and if they can get 2 arms throwing the way that they have been, it'd be a big boost for them and going forward. So, we're always optimistic. We're thinking this team has a shot going forward, so make sure you follow them. Stay tuned with us for all the coverage. Don't touch that dial, though, because when we come back, we're going to talk about the men's and women's lacrosse teams. And welcome back. The women's lacrosse team, as we've talked about for a while, has been playing well. But if you compile all of their games from the past couple months, they have been on an absolute tear. 12 straight wins, 5 players with over 30 goals, and a record of 13-3 overall. This team is steamrolling their way into the NCAA tournament. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself. They have clinched the A-10 title. So, they'll need to win a play-in game or a first-round game in order to really make some noise in the NCAA tournament. But this is a really good team. Holly Turner, Hannah Burnett, your 2 leading point getters, have been phenomenal all year. They're probably up for first team All-A-10. And the rest of this team is just so solidly built. Their defense has been phenomenal. All I can say is, look at this team, watch this team, make sure you follow this team because they are the best team on campus and they're going to bring you the best with regards to postseason results. I'm going to bring in John Andersen. John, I know I'm always very, very honest when talking about the women's lacrosse team because they are.
Hey, did you see the
best
game
team on
this
campus.
past Sunday?
I was going to ask you, what would you like to add?
Well, they were up. They started off the game down to 6-0, and it took them until about 11 minutes left or 13 minutes left in the second half to get the lead, and then they lost the lead, and then they got it back via Hannah Burnett went 3 out of 4 on a little 4-goal run. 3 of them were her own, accounting for 8 total on the day. Yeah, and then they did not lose the lead from there. There was a bit of amount of a comeback from George Mason after that, but UMass held on. I believe the final score was 17-16.
Yeah, Hannah Burnett, Holly Turner, and Kelly Andersen, who also has 36 goals. There are 2 others that also have 30 goals. Kaylee Santos, Hannah Murphy. She's not your sister.
No relation.
No relation. This team has been offensively stellar. I mean,
I was talking about Santos.
Come on. Goalie Lauren Hill has been great. She split time with Kelly Aileen, but both of them combined have just been phenomenal. The defense has been untouchable in the A-10, and this team definitely has some momentum, and they have a chance to really make a splash in the NCAA tournament.
And they're playing Duquesne, who is not very good.
Yeah,
this week.
Last game against the regular season is Duquesne. Not very good, but pay attention to the postseason.
Although UMass is not going to be able to host the tournament, though.
This team will make some noise. That's not fair.
Yes.
Chris Berman, not fair.
Whop.
Now, we're going to move on to the men's lacrosse team. This week, the men's lacrosse team took on top 10 opponent Hofstra. Now, John, when you go in to face a top 10 opponent, what is your mindset?
Well, it was more of... You try to go with the mindset of anything can happen, especially when it comes to UMass lacrosse, because quick history lesson, only 3 years ago, UMass was the #1 team in the country and then got knocked out of the playoffs in the first round. Only 2 years ago did they barely make the conference tournament as a 4 seed and then defeat the 1 seed and then lose to the 2 seed by only a point, and with 30 seconds left on the clock, they went the whole game. So they were that close to the NCAA tournament with a 5-9 record. And then, of course, last year they defeat UNC, who goes on to win the national championship. They defeat number 15 ranked Ohio State at one point. This year, Delaware defeats Rutgers, the #1 team in the country, goes into UMass and loses, and Delaware is basically last year's UMass, because this year Delaware is now 7-7 after being ranked number 12 in the country. Delaware is 7-7. They lost all their conference games. They are out of the tournament.
That's tough.
After defeating the #1 team in the country.
So back to my question.
Yes.
What's the mindset?
Well, the mindset is, like I said, it's that anything can happen. And walking into the stadium, and while we were doing pregame on WMUA on Saturday, we went through that whole set checklist that I just said, and it's that, like a team like this, it's like we just show up and we play our game, and we can beat them because stuff like that happens in college lacrosse, especially when in relation to UMass. However, that's not quite how it went.
No, that isn't. Anything can happen, but something people expected did happen. What was the result of that game, John?
The result of the game was a 15-8 destruction of UMass lacrosse, and they went in with some pride. They faced the pride and then left with no pride. Is kind of how the game went, Tommy. They
went in with emotional pride, hit a pride of lions, and that pride ate their pride, Now there's a whole new pride, and
Yes.
it's just all Hofstra's.
Well, let's see if they can get the pride. In order to get their pride back, they must go slay a dragon. Kind of like Shrek.
Our favorite Drexel Dragons. Yes, the infamous dragon in Shrek, the Great Shrek, one of the all-time great animated movies. The Drexel Dragons, not so animated, not so fun.
Yeah.
They are definitely an opponent to be watched by the Minutemen. They've had a surprising season. They've been a lot better than we've expected. A little bit more bite to the fire than usual. Usually it's just a blowtorch. Now it's a full-blown 3-alarm fire. The Drexel Dragons. What glaring issues does UMass really need to cover up and hide when they go, or cover up and conceal when they go in to play Drexel?
Well, the big thing was that their offense took way too long to get going against Hofstra. They started off down. The score was 10-1 at one point. I think it was 10-3 at halftime. And their offense did finally get going in the second half. And at one point, Tommy, they made you think that they were going to come back. Suddenly they get a little run going. Scores 13-7 with 9 minutes on the clock in the fourth quarter. And we're sitting there immediately. When they scored one goal, we immediately talked about the streak. So I think that was there literally was no streak, and we were already talking about the streak.
To quote the great villain Bane, there is no true despair without hope. So it could be that Hofstra just gave the Minutemen hope, and just so they could,
Hofstra's offense, which was quite like a group of lions, a pride attacking a wildebeest, like that famous video from National Geographic from 2009,
or much like a school of tuna attacking.
Yes, it's like they kind of let up a little bit. And they kind of let UMass in. But Hofstra was running one line the entire game, one midi line. They didn't even have a second midi line that played. There was, I think, one kid got in on power play, on man-ups, which Hofstra had 6 of, by the way. Only scored on 3 of them. So UMass's defense somehow was good, including a 5-on-4. It's a pretty chippy game. UMass had 4 man-up opportunities. Hofstra had 6, plus there was a 5-on-4 at one point, so there was 2 penalties against Hofstra, or 2 against UMass, 1 against Hofstra. It did get really chippy. But then Hofstra was like, nah, and they just swiftly swept UMass under the rug. Ben Spencer, leading the comeback, by the way, had 3 goals on the game. Jake Lasoskas had the Soskas, as you like to say, and he's the one who sparked what we thought was a UMass comeback, but then turned out to not be nothing. But Tommy, the defense could not adjust either, especially in the second half of play. And Hofstra was running this play where kind of a player just kind of runs to his left, you kind of have the offense set up, and then another player rotates behind him, and you just keep passing back to your right, back to your right, back to your right, and eventually the defenseman can't slide, and then they just put one in the net. Or in the case of some of the other goals, just shoot one from anywhere on the field and it will go in the net. DJ Smith made 5 saves in the first half, let in 10 goals, was pulled at halftime for Sean Scanone. Scanone makes 5 saves, lets in 5 more in the second half. So neither goalie particularly had a great day, per se. And
just curious, which of the 2 goalies is your favorite?
DJ Smith, the meaning of life.
Okay. just wanted to clarify that for the audience.
Just so everyone knew. And they can't, UMass's defense, they struggle to stop specifically attackmen when they're on a roll. Delaware's team, all of their scoring came from their midfielders. UMass shut them down. UMass won that game by 4 goals. Took them, and again, in that game, it took their offense a little bit to get going. They were down at halftime. They were down for most of the third quarter, but once they got ahead, UMass can't play from behind either. That's a big one. And especially going into Drexel this week, Tommy, Drexel is something like 75% of their scoring comes from their 3 attackmen, of which 50% comes from Cole Schaefer alone. So Drexel's midfield doesn't really do much. So UMass is going to have to, A, not turn the ball over right off the bat. Face-offs wasn't the issue. It was the transition game, and it was once they got into the offensive zone. Noah Rack won 18 of 29 face-offs in this game, which is an amazing stat line. He did everything he needed to do.
Bergeron-esque.
Yes, Bergeron-esque. Patrice Cleary Bergeron-esque. Got the full name down. Or is it Bergeron Cleary? I don't know. It doesn't matter. So going into this game, UMass needs to not get in the offensive zone and immediately turn the ball over. They need to not take dumb shots, because although Noah did great on the face-offs, there were some times where he had fast breaks, and a lot of times in lacrosse, the teams will let the face-off man take that shot. The defenseman will wait and wait to slide, and boy, did Hofstra execute that to perfection, because Noah Rack would get in, he'd take a shot, and it would bounce in front of him 2 feet off the ground. It was a little wet, too, and then fly over the net, or it would just go straight over the net. Like, Noah Rack must have gotten 5 shots off clean after winning the draw and running down the field, and I think only one of them went on net. The other ones ended up in the stands or in the sky, and like one of them was like the pearl from that SpongeBob episode. It just kept going and then launching balls 100 feet into the air. One of them just never came back. It went up in the sky and then never came down. So yeah, UMass needs to the way that they beat Drexel is by cleaning up those mistakes. Like I said, they need to not let Drexel's attackmen get on a roll. They need to adjust early or come into it knowing that the attackmen are the ones that are going to score. So, I don't know, kind of have some defensemen kind of slide towards them when they don't have the ball, maybe. And the offense needs to not take too long to get going. Their transition game was poor as well in the Hofstra game. That can't be a thing.
So, John, with the team losing this week, you said UMass is basically safe with regards to clinching a spot for the tournament.
And they still are. That didn't change.
But seeding, obviously, an issue, not wanting to run into Hofstra again. Going into this Drexel game, tell us, with a win and a loss, what will those do for seeding?
Well, UMass can only, if UMass wins, they will be the 3 seed. If they lose, they will be the 4 seed. However, it is so hard to determine how the other seeds are going to play out right now because, and I very astutely said at the end of the broadcast, hey, Towson's playing Fairfield today, so let's be honest, that's a fair win. So UMass and Drexel are the 3 of the. Fairfield beat Towson by roughly 5 goals, which was.
What do you mean roughly?
Roughly 5. I don't know. That gives me some leeway because then if I say 5 and it's wrong, which it might be, then no one can be like, oh well, he said roughly, you know. So Drexel is the 3 seed right now. Drexel beat Hofstra, which is shocking. And of these 4 teams, so Fairfield, Delaware, they're out already. These 4 teams all play each other next week as well. Hofstra and Towson play this week. Most likely, whoever wins that game gets the 1 seed. However, since Drexel has that tiebreak over Hofstra, Drexel beats UMass, and then Hofstra loses to Towson. Believe it or not, Drexel will snag that 1 seed.
And the dragon retakes the mountain, much like the desolation of Schmaug.
Oh, excuse me. Hofstra has to. Sorry, other way around. Towson would have to. Towson would have to lose because.
Yeah, I try to forget those Hobbit movies. They were very good.
Yes, but Drexel, and for us over here, for people like me who have to go to those games and could potentially have to, if UMass wins too the first game, have to potentially drive there either. If it's Drexel or Towson, I would stay in a hotel room. But if it's Hofstra, it's close enough I can just drive back, which that's not a bad drive. Hofstra. I am a hardcore Hofstra fan this week. I might completely rebrand my Twitter account with Hofstra logos and stuff, pretend to be the biggest super fan ever. But so Hofstra, if Towson wins, they're the 1 seed. If Hofstra wins but Drexel loses to UMass, Hofstra's the 1 seed. Drexel could be the 1 seed. They can't be the 2 seed. They'll most likely, if they beat UMass and Towson wins, they are the 3 seed. If UMass wins, they're the 3 seed. If they lose, they're the 4 seed. So. And I mean, that's the difference between. They could play any of these 3 teams in the first round: Towson, Hofstra, Drexel.
So there you go. Keep your eye on the Minutemen, and the Minutemen themselves will be keeping the eye on the conference scoreboard because of how much moving. Because of how much moving is going to be going on.
So they'll have slightly an idea after the Drexel game because the Drexel game is this Friday at 5 p.m. Hofstra Towson the following afternoon at noon. So. Well, there will be that buffer period where we don't really know what's going to happen, but we have kind of a clue. And then around 2 p.m. on Saturday, the white smoke will go out, and we'll know the seeding of the CAA conference
Ravens
tournament
will be released.
And where I'm going to have to drag myself to next weekend.
Well, there you have it. That is UMass Sports Weekly for this week. Now, I usually say tune in next week for another great show, but seeing as next week will be our last show, we're going to have a little bit of fun. Now, I'm not going to reveal anything. Don't want to ruin the surprise for our viewers, but we'll be doing something very exciting, very fun, and people here serious. Scare people up